If there's one thing to be said about this season of the Wishes seasonal weapons have been amazing. We did our reviews of Scalar Potential and Scatter Signal. Today, we're going to be bringing up a very unique weapon, the first of its kind, that being a craftable Stasis trace rifle called Appetence. Now, it's our first legendary Stasis trace rifle. However, we do have another legendary trace rifle in that kinetic slot, that being in Scissor, which is a strand trace rifle which drops from Trials of Osiris. Now, we've already reviewed in Scissor from start to finish in both PvE and PvP, but today though, we're going to be looking at Appetence and answering the question, can it compete? Now, jumping straight into Appetence perks, in our left column, we have Loose Change, Hipfire Grip, Slideways, Overflow, Clown Cartridge, Inline Action, and Demolitionist. In our right column, we have Wellspring, High Ground, Deconstruct, Headstone, Attrition Orbs, One for All, and Killing Tally. A unique lineup for sure. Now again, Appetence is craftable, so every single one of these perks can be enhanced. With that in mind though, we immediately jumped into trying out different perk combinations. In that left column, the two that really stands out to us the most are Overflow and Demolitionist. Now obviously Overflow is fantastic. We're picking up special or heavy, automatically loads the weapon beyond normal capacity. That effect maxing out at 100% of the magazine size. But the enhanced version goes further than that at 120%. Now pretty much every time a weapon rolls Overflow, it's usually in the running for being part of the God Roll. And that's no different here for Appetence. The other perk though is Demolitionist. It reads that kills with this weapon generate grenade energy, and activating your grenade ability reloads this weapon from reserves. Now regeneration here comes in at 10% grenade energy per kill. That's for the normal perk. For the enhanced, prepare yourselves, 11%. You get a whopping 11% when getting a kill. Now I know that may not seem like a lot, for the most part it's not, but it's a slight improvement. Regardless though, Demolitionist by itself is such a good perk, especially for grenade builds. And considering this is a Stasis trace rifle, you can imagine yourself running around with a Stasis build, dropping those turrets left and right. Operating with a Stasis weapon that has Demolitionist is always a good choice. And keep in mind, when actually using your grenade ability, whether it's converting it to a turret or using the grenade itself, that too will reload the weapon. Now with those perks in mind, what is the best in that right column? The ones that really jump out to us, obviously, is Headstone. The other being One for All, which is great for damage buffing. And we also have Killing Tally. Now I'm going to focus on Headstone first, considering the Stasis synergy, as it reads that precision final blows spawn Stasis crystals at the victim's location. Headstone is such a good perk, but noticeably more this season, considering we have these two artifact perks right here, which plays hand in hand with any weapon that has Headstone. However, it's a trace rifle. I don't know about you guys, it is not the easiest weapon to land consistent crits with. And when you're in full auto mode, I find myself sometimes getting the body shot kill instead of the headshot kill, which results in me not proccing Headstone. And I know we can bring up the debate of ignition damage versus shatter damage from Stasis. And honestly, looking at the two here, yes, there is a noticeable difference, but what shatter damage and Headstone weapons present is a ton of synergy. And so you could definitely go that route. All I'm saying is that it's just kind of a tough thing to pull off the trace rifle. Maybe your aim is godly, but my aim, especially when I have an ad blowing its load in my face, I have a hard time landing crits with the trace rifle. Even with the enhanced version of Headstone giving us 5 stability, I still have this problem, which takes us to our perks that add lethality. We've got One for All, which essentially gives us a 35% buff in damage when hitting 3 separate targets. Actually not a hard perk at all to proc inside of PvE. Now it increases our damage for a whopping 10 seconds. The enhanced version gives us that same 35% damage buff, but for a longer duration, that being 11 seconds. Now, no, it's just 1 second, but who knows? There's been moments in our lives where 1 extra second could make all the difference, and you know what I mean. Now, the beautiful thing about the 35% damage buff is that it does not require a kill. And in things like GMs, where everything is super meaty, you can just run in there, hit 3 enemies, and boom, you've got a damage buff. Where this is a problem is, of course, if you don't have 3 enemies. And yes, certain Nightfalls, especially things like Hypernet, you struggle with that. Enemies are kind of spread out, and you'll notice that some of them are just kind of in pairs rather than in threes. And this can definitely throw you off when trying to get that damage buff. But I will say, if you have the enemies present, the damage buff is nice. But then we have Killing Tally, which reads, kills increases this weapon damage until it is stowed or reloaded. Now this perk works off of stacks, with each stack granting 10% bonus to damage, maxing out at 30% with 3 stacks. Now I know that's 5% less than One for All. The difference is there is no timer. As long as you don't hit your reload button or you don't swap weapons, Appetence will keep that increase in damage. Now this is going to require you to pretty much use Appetence as a primary weapon, but that's kind of what trace rifles can do inside of PvE if you have a way to feed yourself ammo. Now the benefits of enhanced Killing Tally is that it grants you plus 10 to the magazine stats. So something that just adds a little more ease of use, albeit a minor one. Then the last thing we need to touch on before speaking on the PVE God Roll is the origin trait itself. With it being a Season of the Wish weapon, it comes with the origin trait Dragon's Vengeance, which reads, when an ally dies or you reach critical health, this weapon's magazine refills, and it gains bonus range, charge rate, and handling. Now, charge rate has no effect here. The bonus in range and handling, although really nice for things like PvP, doesn't really matter here for PvE. However, I want to dial in on the fact that it refills the magazine upon reaching critical health. And it's not just part of the magazine, it's the entire magazine from reserves. Now, the effect is very nice, but what I really like about this is that the game doesn't count this as a technical reload, as you're not physically reloading the weapon. And I think you see where we're going with this. When using our killing tally roll, I found that with the combination of demolitionists, I was not only able to build into my grenade builds, but I was also able to maintain that damage buff from killing tally, whether it was from demolitionists topping off my magazine, especially if I had a high discipline build that I was rocking, but also the origin trait itself, which worked beautifully in conjunction with killing tally. Neither demolitionist nor Dragon's Vengeance would deactivate our killing tally damage buff, which means I was pretty much always walking around with a 30% damage buff here, as long as I was throwing grenades or taking damage, which in things like GMs is very easy to do. Now I know you can pursue other things like overflow, which does build into this as well. You can even go overflow in one for all. And for my folks that do land crits like nobody's business, then you can go with a headstone roll. Hell, you can even go double ability energy and rock enhanced demolitionist and enhanced wellspring. And this will give you that double dip and ability regeneration. But even after playing with all those rolls, PvE guys, I found myself gravitating back to that demolitionist kill and tally roll. And it's not like kill and tally is something only present here on Appetence. Scissor has it, Hollow Denial has it. It's present on other trace rifles and still good on those other weapons as well. But that's the beautiful thing here. Depending on the surge, depending on what you're trying to take advantage of, you have a weapon here that's Stasis that you can synergize with Stasis builds. I'm a big fan of this trace rifle, guys, and don't get me wrong, I love Hollow Denial, but with that kinetic slot, Appetence is a top tier choice. Now let's talk PvP. This is where things get a bit criminal. And no, it's not because Appetence isn't a good weapon in PvP. Actually, quite the opposite. This is one of the best trace rifles I have used inside of PvP in terms of feel, target acquisition, 1v1 capabilities. But here's the problem. There is literally nothing good in either column of its perk combinations for PvP. It's criminal. Now, stat to stat comparisons between Appetence and Incisor is clearly better, but I would say Appetence feels better. I don't know, guys. I'm just giving you my experience. Appetence base-wise feels better, but Incisor clears it completely in terms of perk combinations, as nothing here on Appetence is geared toward PvP. But I'm still going to try out as many things as I can to possibly arrive at something good. One of the perks being Enlightened Action, which states that dealing damage improves reload speed and handling. Now, I chose the enhanced version, which states that dealing damage significantly improves reload speed and handling, but the reality is multiple stacks will easily max out that handling stats, which is something I actually appreciated on Appetence. I don't like slow handling trace rifles, and yes, a lot of them do have slow handling speeds, but proccing this perk is pretty nice. Now, the only other perk that might be useful is Slime Waste. Now, this partially refills your magazine, but the big benefit is the increase in stability and handling. Now, this requires nothing but sliding, and it lasts for roughly 3 seconds. Now, if you don't mind sliding, then Slime Waste is pretty good. Arguably, Slide Shot is better, at least in my opinion, as you can reproc it more often, and it boosts range. But as I said a second ago, handling is something that hurts me when using trace rifles, and this is something that's really nice here, as it boosts not only your handling, but also your stability by plus 25, if you're rocking the enhanced version. Now, which perk in that final column is PvP worthy? Guys, nothing really. About the only perk I arrived at, and this is gonna sound crazy to even recommend, is High Ground. And that's because it's really the only thing that can help us on the front end of a gunfight. Everything else, from kill and tally to one for all, you're gonna be in situations where either A, you can't proc those perks, or B, you run out of ammo. And so I'm trying to find ways to just boost my damage, at least slightly, on the front end, which is what High Ground grants us with that 10% buff in damage, just as long as we have the high ground on our enemies. Now keep in mind, high ground does not mean you floating in the air. It means your physical body being higher than the enemy, which depending on the map is not a difficult thing to do. And it's kind of funny, as long as you just put yourself at a slightly higher elevation, boom, you've got that 10% buff. Now, taking into consideration that this is a trace rifle and you're not always going to reach that perfect optimal time to kill of 0.73 seconds within 12 crits on max resilience guardians. Now, this time to kill doesn't actually shift at all across the resilience levels. It only requires one less crit with each tier. But if we add high ground active, Appetence time to kill at tier 10 resilience drops to 0.67 seconds at 11 crits. And mirroring its base form, time to kill can get lower than that, but it does get more forgiving at each tier. So yes, high ground does help this weapon perform in PvP. It's not huge, but it's nice. And I don't know, I felt confident when I would take the high ground on my enemies. I would be like, yo, square up with me. I've got 10% more damage. Overall, guys, if you absolutely want to rock Appetence inside of PvP, the perk combinations that I found that I really liked included polygonal rifling, tactical battery, inline action, and high ground. And maybe if you don't like inline action, you can go slime waste if you can remember to slide. But that actually felt good to me. And the stats here with my associated masterwork was pretty good. 85 range, 90 stability. Look, I know Incisor is like maxing everything out, especially the adept versions of Incisor, but oddly enough, Appetence felt better to shoot for me. It just doesn't have great PvP rolls. So guys, that is our complete review of our first legendary Stasis trace rifle. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.